Despite winning praise around the globe, the historic agreement failed to get a unanimous welcome in the U.S., let alone its close ally, Israel. Our Washington correspondent, Gayane Chichakyan, takes a look at how, despite diplomatic triumph, the Obama administration has found itself between a rock and a hard place.
Today, that diplomacy opened up a new path toward a world that is more secure.
And flying in the face of President Obama.
What was concluded in Geneva last night is not a historic agreement. It's a historic mistake. It's not made the world a safer place.
In an environment where Israel, as well as many U.S. lawmakers, don't think that Iran should develop nuclear technology at all, the Obama administration had to engage in diplomatic acrobatics to both acknowledge Iran's right to peaceful nuclear energy and not acknowledge it at the same time.
We approach these negotiations with a basic understanding. Iran, like any nation, should be able to access peaceful nuclear energy. But because of its record of violating its obligations, Iran must accept strict limitations on its nuclear program that make it impossible to develop a nuclear weapon.
The scope and role of Iran's enrichment, as is set forth in the language within this document, says that Iran's peaceful nuclear program is subject to a negotiation and to mutual agreement.
Despite the officials' attempts to appease the hawks, punches are flying.
It looks like we've tacitly agreed that they will be enriching for commercial purposes down the road. So I think you're going to see on Capitol Hill again a bipartisan effort to try to make sure that this is not the final agreement.
Another Senator, Marco Rubio, called the deal, quote, a blow to our allies in the region who are already concerned about America's commitment to their security, end of quote.
I think a lot of people, both in the Middle East and on Capitol Hill, are very concerned that this interim deal becomes the new norm.
Opponents of the deal in Washington and abroad are already working not to let it survive the 6-month trial. The Obama administration is walking on eggshells before Congress, Israel, and its allies in the Gulf as it's trying to convey a carefully worded message, which is, you cannot threaten war all the time. In Washington, I'm Gayane Chichakyan.
And writer Ryan Dawson believes that despite heavy criticism at home and abroad, Washington will not back out of the deal.
The U.S. is not going to give up on this peace deal. We've had a basic Cold War with Iran since 1979, and this is a major step forward, and we have everybody on board. Yes, they're not enriching to 20%, and that had nothing to do with the scare of a nuclear weapon either. That was probably more the French who don't want to compete with it on the market for medical isotopes. But there's been a lot of negotiation and a lot of time put in this, and they're not going to throw it all away because the Israelis are having a fit.
Well, some U.S. lawmakers are also voicing concerns that Iran's gaining a lot while giving virtually nothing. To discuss just how much Iran might be gaining in financial terms, here with me is RT's Venture Capital host, Katie Pilbeam. Good morning to you, Katie. Great to have you with us. Well, certainly a breakthrough deal reached yesterday. So let's now talk about the immediate effects of this deal on Iran's economy. What are they?
Well, it means that the country can get hold of around $6 billion worth of assets, both in commodities and financials. So let's break this down for you as to exactly what they're going to be able to tap into. So it means the country can resume trade in the likes of gold, petrochemicals and auto exports. Now, although the country's earnings will be greatly improved, Iran's earnings will still be $30 billion less than before the sanctions were ever introduced. And that's because of restrictions on Iran's oil exports. They will remain in place for now. Now, other assets that they'll be able to get into is, of course, the financials, because the country has been frozen out of the global banking system, as we know. We're talking around $4 billion in total that they'll be able to get their hands on, which we know is what they need to do at the moment. The country is enduring their second year of recession, so lots of challenges. So this money is most certainly greatly needed.
Sure. Well, as you just mentioned earlier, I mean, we still have the freeze in oil exports, but Iran used to be the largest oil exporter as well, like fourth, I think, largest, if I'm not mistaken. All right, but that's the immediate effects of this deal on Iran's economy. What about the long-term
long-term investment? That's what the country needs going forward, and it needs these big global energy countries to get involved with the country again. The country has had a stalemate in terms of investment, and that's because it's been an unstable environment. Now we know that military action is now far less likely. It means countries are going to be more encouraged to go there and spend their cash. It also means for the 75 million people living in the country that they'll be able to get hold of cheaper goods because of the import tariffs. Just last year, import and export costs were around a fifth, which was a great disadvantage to the country, as we know. We already know that there's been negotiations with the likes of Chevron, Total, Shell, all in anticipation of this deal, wanting to get back in the country and take advantage of those sectors. Not just oil, though, we've also got agriculture, consumer goods as well. I wanted to mention inflation because it's now at 40%. That puts huge pressure, particularly on the poorer families. So that's as well what will happen in the long term.
Well, absolutely, as we have 6 months down the road, and it'll be interesting to see the developments, both economic and others in the country, and how everything develops there. And of course, the investors are probably still cautiously optimistic about the situation there. For now, though, Katie, thank you so much for breaking it all down for us and explaining the long-term and as well as the short-term effect of the deal on Iran and its economy.